ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the great, the one and only Timothy Hollerang. Yes, it is I. You want to know how I performed that pure magic? Well, you see, I watched The Secret yesterday, and turns out I create my own reality. In fact, I create all reality, so if you're having a good time, you're welcome. If you're having a hard time, sorry, it must just be because I don't like you. That's about the amount of sarcasm I can handle for today, I think. I'd actually like to properly reintroduce myself. Hello, my name is Timothy Hollerang. My job is actually damage prevention. I strive to undo the things you may have heard or believed in the past that may have unwittingly caused you or others harm. Now, believe it or not, astrology is invested in the truth. And I say it that way because I think the vast majority of so-called astrologers may not know astrology, so we're attempting to get to astrology. By the way, I do teach a school. You can join at my community below, not before. And we're teaching from the school of Jeffrey Green. We're teaching from the school of Dane Rudyard. I'm sure if you're into astrology at all, you must have heard of these people because astrology comes from all cultures around the world, has been developed over thousands of years, and there's been brilliant sages and pioneers who have spearheaded and really introduced to humanity what the truth of astrology is. So, by and large, what we see out there in the world of intuitive astrologers, and I'm writing a book and designing a course today based off of what I believe astrology to be, damage prevention would probably like to snip that one in the bud. I'll be totally honest, I have a growing hatred and resentment of the New Age movement. I know that's controversial to say, considering that's pretty much where I am positioned at. A little bit of a tense place. I'll talk about this later on in the video. But evil hurts people, and I'm not really into hurting or harming anybody. So anger is, believe it or not, a protective, defensive emotion, and I'd like to tap into that passion to continue to talk about and put out what I do. Here's an interesting reflection. I noticed that when there are tough times on planet Earth, the people who are actually addressing that truth, our numbers go down. And then during a tough time on planet Earth, there's a significant percentage of people that suddenly become very preoccupied in delusional people that aren't addressing reality, may be as sensitive as a cinder block, don't feel into anything, don't care about anybody outside of themselves, but they say pleasant, nice sounding, The Secret type of things, and their numbers go up. One of the most heartbreaking and mind awakening experiences I went through doing this astrology work was during the coronavirus pandemic. And actually one of the most, world renowned astrologers who's really, really taken things and has a lot of respect and esteem, he reached out to me and thanked me for talking about the fact that people were catching coronavirus irrelevant of how high or low vibe they were. Because I'm sure many of you who are on social media or involved in this world remember all of these memes and all of these posts about how only low vibe people were getting sick with coronavirus. Now, this is the type of pure bullshit that goes out there in the New Age movement all the time. It's called victim blaming. You actually take the people that are suffering, deserve compassion and love the most, but because they make us uncomfortable for merely existing on the same planet as us, we have to form ways to bypass, dissociate, blame, and ignore. Ableism, for example, is very prevalent in certain New Age thinking cult-like dynamics where we believe that any physical challenge must become manifest via our own basically incorrect attitude or whatever it may be. And again, this is so contrary to actual compassion or actual sensitivity or feeling into the world around us. It's pure psychopathy. But psychopaths are leading whole lemming armies off of the cliff, and the whole group believes they're getting enlightened. So I'll let you know, I'm not ascended, I'm not going to be ascended. If I were to even speak in intergalactic terms, which I'm very uncomfortable speaking in, and I think this may be why I've been on the planet for a long time, I don't have a plan on leaving the planet. I don't have a plan on becoming anything other than a human being. And I used to introduce myself as a human being at the front of every video. That was not a joke. People would say to me, oh, that's funny that you introduce yourself as a human being because obviously being so young and wise, you're an extraterrestrial. No. Nope. I'm just a human being extraordinaire. All right. Thanks for bearing with me through the intro. Let's talk about what's going on in these times. And we're going to be talking about majorly February 2023, as well as a Leo full moon. And I did a kind of tongue-in-cheek joke poking fun at Leo, introducing myself at first as I did. But we're going to correct some of those bias. Actually, I think some of the most important work that could be done in the astrological field is let's remove these stereotypes, these generalizations and biases around zodiac signs that are actually quite inaccurate. Because similarly, if we have a half-assed astrological education and we're assessing people without actually knowing the zodiac to any depth, we could very well be harming people or putting people down. But if we understand the zodiac concretely, this is one of the most empowering things ever. We can remove the bias or the projections coming from the world or other people by understanding our nature and giving the permission to ourselves to be who and what we are. Again, check out my Astro School in the community. I go very in-depth, not only with the zodiac, the moon's nodes, through all the signs and houses. This is some of the most important information you can know about astrology or your birth chart. One more thing. These videos are simply meant to be a meeting point, so that way you know that I exist. This is not a highly accurate astrology reading for you as an individual. That's what you get from a one-on-one reading from an astrologer. And if you have not gotten that, I highly suggest that, so that way you know what astrology is in its depth, what it can do for you. I'll also quickly mention, before we get to the astrology, I find myself, this character, I'm a segue from New Age, delusion, disassociated harm, pretend world into the truth. That's what astrology is, believe it or not. It leads us into the truth. But we don't lose magic as we're coming out of delusional bullshit pretend land and we start to enter into the truth, which has historically been the occult. It had to go in hiding because the truth was so unsavory to the masses, and honestly still is. Let's talk about it. We're in a highly restless period. Yeah, I'm not sure who's saying that these are calm, steady times. We see Sun square Uranus during this full moon, which will be on the 5th. Sun squares Uranus a couple days before on the 3rd. I'm going to talk about how this full moon aligns with the nodes of Neptune. That is significant. Full moon squares Uranus. Asteroid Lucifer aligns with this full moon, very charged. I mean, we're going to see, like how I poked fun at Leo at the start of this video, that's a possibility with this type of full moon. It can really get lost in itself. It can, the level of excitement, and as a very Leo person, this is a part of my struggle. The level of excitement can sometimes be self-defeating or blowing a circuit. This is Aquarius season. It's very electrical. This is when we explore our nervous system. This is when we're exploring PTSD, the very unique coping mechanisms that we've formed out of our past experiences. And generally, the whole direction, North Node in Taurus, is leading us into sovereignty, slowing down, spaciousness. So, there can be these kind of cluttering periods, and it can still be a little bit exhausting. Fortunately, Mars is pulling forward. Been in quincunx with the moon south node the last several weeks. Mars is also out of bounds and on the north node of Uranus, so still got a lot of restlessness that's powering up the old steam locomotive so we can get things going. Now, Venus entered Pisces on January 26th, will remain there through February 20th. Okay, Venus is said to be exalted in Pisces. In traditional astrology, she's happy there. This is a creative, romantic, free-flowing time. Now, Venus rules the North Node in Taurus, so this really is about tuning into our hearts, our deeper spiritual connection. What is the meaning that keeps us afloat? The purpose that orients us to the whole. Now, we'll talk about asteroids. There's quite a few significant asteroid signatures going on. It's amazing how much more sensitive I've become living by myself in the woods for a few months, because it's like every single thing affects me now so much more than it used to. Anyways, apologize for the neighbor's loud car. On Saturday the 4th, Venus squares Mars, and this is another signature for this highly creatively charged time. Yeah, this square aspect is, like so many things in astrology, it's not totally understood. So, and these are the things I'm saying all the time and will continue to say. Those green lines when we're talking about aspects, sextiles, trines, those are harmonious aspects. They don't necessarily mean good. And tense aspects, such as squares, quincunx, or oppositions, those are more tense aspects, but let's not pretend that that means bad. Okay, if you see a lot of squares in the chart, don't be scared. If you see a lot of trines in the chart, it doesn't mean they have a perfectly situated life or awareness either. So the square aspect's actually one of the most creatively charged. It forces us to deal with the tension that has to be resolved in a new or creative way. And this is a third quarter square between Venus and Mars. This has everything to do with relationship, autonomy, sexuality, collaboration, love. How do we bridge Venus, what we love and value in our hearts, in our relationships? And how do we maintain healthy autonomy, freedom, independence? We're going to talk about this. Is indeed still the theme of the day. In fact, this theme, I think, is going to only continue to be highlighted now into March. Now, for those who tune into me regularly, you know that I base these videos off of the information coming from the moon, coming from eclipses. It's been since our last solar eclipse in Scorpio at the end of September, conjunct Venus, that all of this theme to do with relationships has been up collectively and taking us into springtime of 2023. We're talking about the end of April into May is when we're going to get our next shift with eclipses. But this is like going through layers of compost, our own unconscious, our own shadow, our own attractions and repulsions that can be nearly inexplicable, mysterious, driven by powerful reactions, powerful forces. And any relationship is complex. I mean, who is pretending that we're clicking our heels together, that we create our own reality and everything's perfectly fine? That's not real life. When I get to the full moon, I'm going to talk a little bit about isolation and loneliness, which is a theme that comes up with the Leo Aquarius polarity. Well, this is also a reality. Can we be totally known by anybody? How can we therefore be known to the best of our own ability? How can we maneuver through relationships in a healthy and productive way? And again, this is going to be a tension taking us now through March where, it's going to be about the need for freedom and autonomy and liberation and independence. So that can manifest in many, many different ways. Again, I don't pretend to know what's going on in you in the individual level. Do you see these shitty tarot readers out there that are just like, you tuned into this video, so clearly I'm speaking to you. Yes, I am. Fuck that shit. That's not real at all. Anyways, if your relationship's falling apart and it hasn't yet, there's still time. And we do have things to sort through. So yes, our relationship can shift. Dynamics can shift. But let's get real about it. Either you love a person or you don't. And let's not pretend that we love everybody. Come on, people. Be a human being. Don't pretend you love everybody and you love everything. If you pretend to love somebody, you will deceive them. If you are clinging onto a relationship out of insecurity, then it is insecurity that's driving the relationship. If you are afraid to go it on your own or to go into the void, then it is codependency that is driving the relationship. Here's the point. Venus and Mars across the board for all of us is going to be this evolution of how we're relating self to other. And it really is self-connection is taking the precedent. Can we even enter a relationship if we don't know ourselves and we don't have our shit together? Answer is no. No, we do have to have our ducks in a row first. But let's also evolve what relationship is out of these silly traditional standards, these cultural expectations and obligations. Again, I'm just trying to get us out of this silly New Age, Pisces age, Christian age, you pray to the right gods, your life becomes perfect, as if we all don't have really complex, unmet needs. So if you see someone miserable out there, don't assume they have the incorrect attitude and they need a New Age platitude in order to fix themselves. No, people are miserable because they have unmet needs. I have personally never met anybody who chooses to be miserable, and I'm not even sure how we start to enable one another to possess these kind of evil beliefs. No. So you can get your needs met, even needs for intimacy, for connection outside of relationship. Maybe it's easier said than done, I have to admit. One of my biggest unmet needs is for touch. And as a man, that's not something I can just readily go out and ask anybody for. As a man, I've been told no many times. And this is how it is. You may know your unmet needs. You may communicate your unmet needs perfectly. Even that doesn't necessarily mean that the universe is suddenly going to start supporting you. There's actually a lot of levels and pieces and dimensions to getting ourselves totally fulfilled. Okay. The point is, we can start to understand what our needs are and to start to put out the request. And this can also be the request for space. This can also be the request for autonomy. I mean, this is actually going to be highlighted for many, many souls right now. It's like, okay, too much. I'll come back to you another day. There's no problem with this whatsoever. This is all essentially boiling down to communication. If you don't want a relationship, let your partner or potential partner know that. Don't wait a year to realize you're disinterested in a dynamic that actually requires you to tune into another soul. Do you want that? This is going to be a period where the need for self-focus is taking precedent as we are breaking free of so many old societal molds that have guilt attached to them, expectation, obligation, gender stigma. I mean, there's too much to name, right? But all of these things can get in the way of us simply knowing ourselves, requesting our needs. And again, this is where I actually believe astrology can be the most useful tool to our species at this time, is to simply diagnose these things. And then we also learn how can we provide these things for one another. That's the basis of the Rasa Leela community, which I'm honored to be a part of. Let's look at these asteroids. So not only is it Venus square Mars, it's asteroid Pallas Athena squares Juno, like on the exact same day. So this really highlights the, again, autonomy versus relationship, but also this once again brings up creativity. How can we, as humans, remain creatively inspired without any relational connection or without any freedom or autonomy? I think that this oftentimes becomes one of the number one struggles to creative souls. How do we remain creatively inspired if we're in a bubble by ourselves? We're the only thing that exists. So we want to do some show and tell. But if we're totally merged with somebody and that's all that we see, think, hear about all day long, how are we going to be creatively inspired? How are we going to maintain autonomy? How are we going to know what excites us? What makes us tick that's different from the other? So this brings up the, we could say, masculine-feminine pole. Yeah, not talking about gender, but energetics here. How do we balance the receptivity with the necessary initiation and creativity? And there's going to be a maneuvering through wherever there may be a disbalance of this masculine and feminine. Again, I'm speaking energetically, so a lot of my very, very happy people out there that believe themselves to be enlightened and are unfortunately leading the lemming armies off of the cliffs are just really masculine people. They're all fire signs. I'll talk about Leo here in a minute. Leo oftentimes becomes associated as the most narcissistic sign. It's actually the element of fire. Aries, Leo, Sagittarius are equally narcissistic. It's about freedom, it's about autonomy, it's about independence for all of these signs. They have different ways and different biases. Leo can be obsessed with their own particular thing. Sagittarius can be just as obsessed with their own particular thing, but Sagittarius may assign the bias of, no, this is the universal truth, though. Just as narcissistic. I'll let you know that. Now, asteroid Juno, the partnership asteroid, conjoins Chiron on the 8th. So again, there's a healing through relationship, but there could be a need for separation, a need for space. This same signature, Jupiter is going to be approaching Chiron this next month. This can have so much to do with physical, bodily vitality, as well as sexuality. Jupiter transiting Aries is a necessary self-exploration. Could also be an exploration of the animal consciousness, bodily consciousness, instincts, desire. And we all need a fair level of freedom, autonomy, and being in tune with our own unique and individual desires, as those desires are actually the motivation that allows us to live. So we're not just attempting to be spiritual by eliminating all of our desires in an inauthentic way. The only way to authentically eliminate desires is to explore them. And there's one of two ways this happens. Either we eat the ice cream cone until we get, we no longer are really wanting ice cream. And I'm not speaking about addiction here, because the reason addictions form is because of unmet needs. It's not because I just love to eat ice cream all day, every day. Again, nobody actually does. The other way to authentically eliminate a desire could simply be putting your hand on the hot stove enough times until you no longer want to put your hand on the hot stove. Fun times. You are going to want to look at the mid degrees of the cardinal signs. Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn. I must have Chiron transiting my Mars because I got coronavirus over the last summer. I must have been too low vibe. And it's like my brain, my energy, I can hardly focus since. And that's just one small facet of what's been going on. I'm not even totally sure if that's why. But anyways, mid-degree of the cardinal signs, that's going to be relevant with Jupiter conjoining Chiron through this next month. Other asteroid placement, as we see, Ceres will station retrograde, 6 degrees Libra, Friday the 3rd, opposite to Jupiter. Again, the requirement is to balance our own nurturing and nourishing ourselves as much as we may be pulled to serve, provide, help, heal, provide nourishment and nurturance to others. We have to learn to hear no. We have to learn to say no. A lot of, again, exploration of these boundaries so we can maintain autonomy in relationship. Asteroid Vesta will enter Aries February 8th through April 15th. This is, again, leading us in the direction of this autonomy, this self-focus, the need to keep what is interesting and what is exciting like a trail of breadcrumbs leading us forward. Now the sun is at the bends, meaning sun is square the moon's nodes. This indicates us being halfway in between our eclipse season. So for those of us who've been going through a significant death or regeneration, keep your chin up. There can be shifts. We may be moving out of one process into the next, which again, the theme is death and regeneration for every single one of us. These are challenging times. My people are sensitive. My people tend to be made of the water element. I've been hearing from a lot of folks recently that are struggling, every single day. It's like being underwater, the anxiety, the fear. I want to let you all know you are not crazy for having this experience. Those who have one foot in the collective, highly 12th house, Pisces, Neptune souls, and there's more than that. There's lots of different signatures, but this is the experience here on planet Earth. If there was one human being on the planet, their experience would be one of apprehension and anxiety as we're exploring the deep unconscious, the unresolved things of the past. One of the most predictable things when the moon's south node went into Scorpio just over a year ago is there would be an increase of collective violence, shootings, reactions, drug usage, and correlating, death and suicide. That is what's taking place on this planet. How do we keep our chin up, lay that trail of breadcrumbs every single day? It may be as simple as the next nap, the next snack, the next time you're going to sit in the garden and look at the birds. This is the essential healing medicine and magic to get through these dark corridors that I'm not pretending or saying you should have a happy face when your leg is caught in a bear trap. All right, to conclude, let's talk about the full moon in Leo. I'll talk about the archetype of Leo. This full moon aligns with my moon's nodes. I can speak a bit about it. This full moon also squares the transiting moon's nodes. So this makes it a bit more ramped, spontaneous. Again, we can see that Leo that was demonstrated at the beginning of this video that can potentially come out. This excitement, this self-direction, a creative explosion. And this is the nature of the sun. And highly Leo people as well. If you get too close, it's like being burnt alive. So we have to balance this excitement, this warmth, this creative potential with the community, with the others, with the network, what's going on with them, their pace, their time, their needs. Awfully creative full moon, I gotta say, aligned with the nodes of Neptune as well. You can all know the nodes of Neptune exists in the Aquarius Leo polarity for all souls on the planet at this time, which is why we see very creative people with many planets in Leo or Aquarius. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Leo stigma and stereotype because, again, Leo gets cast down and, oh yeah, Leo's narcissistic, totally self-interested, totally self-obsessed. No, that's unhealthy Leo. That's out of balance Leo. Authentic Leo is not like this. Authentic Leo is Hercules. And Hercules is actually initiated through so many trials. It's the hero's journey is the sun. So the highly Leonian soul is actually the individual that's living their Herculean hero's journey. There can be many challenges involved in becoming a heroic figure or being initiated into being a heroic figure that can therefore be an inspiration to others. And that's what Leo is at its best. It's the prodigy child that is born, inspiring, tuned in, creative. That's what this full moon's going to give us an opportunity to tune into. What have we creatively developed? Where are we skilled? Where can we feel good? And where can we recognize ourselves for our own creative capabilities? That's true Leo. Every single person must have a healthy level of narcissism. You hear that? Narcissism isn't only bad. We have to have a healthy level of narcissism, which means self-recognition of our own creative capacity. Okay. Now, we may see someone who's very Leo get wrapped up into being the knight in shining armor. So again, there's a balance here. We can be heroes sometimes. We can't always be a hero. This is where humility, being a limited human being, acknowledging those limitations, not berating ourselves for having them, is absolutely essential. Now I'm going to talk about loneliness. This is full moon opposite to Saturn in Aquarius. The sun will join Saturn in this next week. So loneliness, isolation, this can also remain. It's a collective theme that's gone on for years. Not that I know anything about that, but there can be some of this experience of isolation. What I want to talk about is that there are different kinds of loneliness. And I can talk about all of them. No, I shouldn't say all of them. I know about different types of loneliness, though. And, well, I'm a Pluto 5th house South Node in Leo, so I'm a highly Leonian soul myself. And I've been actually recently watching actors' circles. And I have felt more resonance and connection in these actors' circles that I felt in so many places because I relate to the struggle. And what so many actors struggle with is fame. We like to think that fame is for the privileged. Fame is really challenging. For people who have actually become famous, wow, it's very challenging. Very few people reach it to that top of the pyramid, but for those who do, fame highly affects the psyche, can be extremely burdensome. And what many of these actors talk about is the loneliness of not being known, while at the same time being supposedly known by everyone. And this is a very frequent experience. To be honest, I have 3 friends that I would say know me, just to be totally honest. And, the last video I made, I want to thank you. That was really amazing. It's something like 1 out of 3 viewers commented. And I don't know if I've ever seen a statistic like that on a YouTube video. I mean, that's really fascinating feedback. So thank you. That was, I must have evoked something the way I do. I pull my strings. You see me do that. But I got a lot of phone numbers because I was, being a little bit more vulnerable with my struggle, which I do from time to time. The reason I do that is to give permission to you to do the same, as opposed to just simply trying to get something from you. But I did receive a lot of, people reaching out, and it's appreciated. I received a lot of phone numbers. I don't feel less lonely talking to anyone on the phone, though, because I'm the figurehead on the YouTube channel that's always talking to everybody all the time. So I really, I'm not a phone talker, even though I'm a Gemini who talks a lot in these videos. I'm not stereotypical Gemini. A lot of people think that I'm like super intellectual, reading books, talking all day long. Well, I do for my job, but outside of that, no, that's not like my obsession. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in school. Hell no. It's not how I am. So there's different types of loneliness. Think of the loneliness of being in a failing relationship. That's an extreme isolation. There's, of course, the actual isolation where you have no human contact. But in my experience, I've actually experienced more isolation, I think, when there's people around me. Okay. So when we're talking about Leo Aquarius polarity, this always has an evolutionary theme of individuating into who we are, which is uniquely special. Highly evolved Leo is embracing this specialness in a way that doesn't actually demand or require the understanding of others, because there is a maintained self-confidence, like the Hollywood star that may be followed around by the paparazzi, but they just kind of tune it out because that's simply to be expected. They're a Hollywood star. With Leo and Aquarius, we don't have to try to be understood by everybody. It's about letting our freak flag fly. It's about being the eccentric that we are. It's about being the weird wackadoodle that we were born to be. When we actually let that cat out of the bag, when we let our freak flag fly, that's when we stick our antenna out and the genius starts to flow in. The creativity starts to flow in. So there's no need to pretend or fit any molds or even be understood. By and large, it's simply a waste of time to be understood, I don't know, really by any mass. We're going to be understood more in specialized places with specialized people. That is the fixed signs, is we're actually integrating this Leo Aquarius polarity with the full moon square the nodes with the Taurus Scorpio polarity that can actually be quite exclusive and behind the scenes. So as much as we have that excitement, that self-recognition, that creative spark, we need to integrate that with our bodies, our souls. And again, there can be a wisdom of less is more with the North Node transiting Taurus. Think of this example of exclusivity. You want to create a new company, say a clothes company, that's successful, but you don't want to sell out. So maybe you are gathering the finest materials. It's expensive, it's pricey, it's exclusive. And your store only opens for 2 days of the year. And during those 2 days, it's like huge crowds are lined up outside your store, so that way you can get that exclusive material, okay? So that's going to be my sign off. I look forward to speaking to you in a couple weeks. For those in my community, we do a free community meeting every month. You are all welcome to join. My sign off is don't sell out. No need to appease the masses. No need to join the secret cult. Do your own thing. Specialize. Be exclusive. Find the others. Limit your options. Don't throw yourself to the wolves. Don't cast your pearls before swine. Don't go tell you no. Fill yourself up. Harness that creative urge. And then when it's ready to be embodied, when it's ready to come into reality, it's just one step after the next. All right? Take care of yourselves. I look forward to talking to you next time.